I want to say welcome to all of you who are here with us in person in Georgetown's historic Gaston Hall, and welcome also to the 4,000 of you watching online. I'm Kim Daniels. Thank you. My name is Kim Daniels, and I'm the director of Georgetown's Initiative on Catholic Social Thought and Public Life. Our hearts are heavy tonight in the wake of the terrible violence haunting our nation. Yesterday, Charlie Kirk, 31 years old, a husband and father and son, was gunned down speaking about ideas on a college campus, much as we're doing here tonight. Also yesterday, multiple students were shot in yet another school shooting, this time at Evergreen High School in Colorado. This is just what happened yesterday. Just a few weeks ago, young children were shot and killed at the opening mass at Annunciation Catholic School. The litany of names of those lost to senseless violence in recent months and years is much too long. Every one of these people is a child of God, and every one of their lives was precious. Today is also September 11th, the anniversary of another terrible day. We cannot gather without remembering those who were killed in New York and Pennsylvania and at the Pentagon 24 years ago. And this anniversary is another reminder of the fragility of life, the evil of terror, and the ways our country can come together, and our duty to continue to cherish human life, seek justice, and pursue peace in our often violent world. Tonight we pray for those lost, for those who are in the headlines and those who are not. We pray for their families, for our country, and for all victims of violence in our broken world. I want to take a moment here to pray. We're going to pray the Our Father, and if you're inclined to join us here, please do so. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. That's one way we can stand in solidarity together, by praying together. We also, of course, as we pray, we also pledge to act to resist violence and to address its causes. And in the words of Scripture, we must choose life, all life, every life. And so tonight we turn our attention to another crisis, the urgent human and pastoral crisis of massive and indiscriminate deportations and assaults on human dignity in our communities and our nation. There are other vital questions which can and should be addressed about immigration. How does our nation manage and secure our borders and fix our broken asylum system? What are the elements of a just, compassionate, and effective immigration reform? But tonight, we're focused on the ways current policies and immigration enforcement actions threaten the human dignity of our sisters and brothers in our parishes, communities, and nation, and how and why the Catholic community stands against these actions and in solidarity with immigrant families. This evening's roundtable is extraordinarily urgent, coming at a moment of pain and fear for so many within our communities, and in the midst of one of the most dramatic disruptions of the U.S. Catholic Church's life in recent decades. In its first 9 months, the Trump administration has allowed immigration agents to conduct enforcement actions in previously protected areas like churches, schools, and hospitals, has successfully pushed for legislation that more than tripled immigration detention funding and allocated nearly $30 billion in additional funding for deportations. It's ended the temporary legal protection status of millions of people, including Haitians, Venezuelans, Cubans, Nicaraguans, and others legally allowed into the United States, and is attempting to end the legal status of over 1 million more people. It's deployed the National Guard to Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. to facilitate immigration enforcement actions amid protests from local communities. So today we are witnessing working people, being pulled off the streets by masked men, families being separated, people sent to horrific prisons in faraway countries, and the list goes on. And as a result, we've witnessed communities full of fear, families torn apart, and people afraid to go to church and work and school, and other places because of the threats and realities of these immigration enforcement actions and deportation efforts. Throughout these situations, parishes and communities have found ways to support one another, financially, spiritually, providing physical safety, and by reminding one another that Christ is in the boat in the middle of the storm. And as Bishop Rhodes, the chair of the U.S. Bishops' Religious Liberty Committee, has written, ministry to migrants is not peripheral to the work of the church. It is central. So tonight we have an exceptional group of respected leaders who have demonstrated diverse and powerful responses to the numerous attacks on the dignity of immigrants in their dioceses and in their ministries. First, Archbishop Jose Gomez, who is joining us virtually, leads the nation's largest Catholic community in Los Angeles, California, and has served as president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Ashley Feasley is the legal expert in residence at the Immigration Law and Policy Initiative at Catholic University of America's Columbus School of Law, and she previously worked as the Director of Migration Policy at the USCCB and served on the National Security Council and in the departments, served the National Security Council and in the departments of HHS and Homeland Security. Father Guillermo Trevino is the pastor of twin Hispanic parishes in Iowa. He is also the chaplain and co-chair of Escucha Mi Voz, a community organizing group. Bishop Mark Seitz is the bishop of El Paso, Texas. He is also the chairman of the U.S. Bishops' Migration Committee. Nicole Flores is an associate professor of religious studies at the University of Virginia and the author of The Aesthetics of Solidarity, Our Lady of Guadalupe and American Democracy. Archbishop Thomas Wensky is the Archbishop of Miami. His advocacy for migrants and refugees, especially Haitians and Cubans, has been at the center of his ministry for decades. And Sister Norma Pimentel is the executive director of Catholic Charities of the Rio Grande Valley and the leader of the Humanitarian Respite Center for Families Fleeing Violence in Central America, work that earned praise from Pope Francis. Finally, Bishop Avelio Menivar Alaya is the auxiliary bishop in the Archdiocese of Washington and the former pastor of St. Mary's Catholic Church in Landover Hills. In 2023, he became the first Salvadoran bishop in the United States. And now let's get started with you, Nicole. You're a respected moral theologian, you're an expert on Catholic social teaching, and especially you're an expert at the Church's role at the intersection of faith and politics. Among other issues, you think about migration from a Catholic theological perspective. So as we begin, can you help outline how Scripture and Catholic social teaching, particularly regarding human dignity, offer for criteria for assessing the kind of actions that I've been talking about?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me this evening. It's always an honor to be present with all of you here at Georgetown University. And you're absolutely right, Kim, that the principles that guide our view of migration are ones that flow from the Catholic social principle of life and human dignity. When I first began teaching courses on Catholic social thought, I used to tell my students who were really struggling to grasp all of the ins and outs of the tradition, I said, there's only one thing you need to know. There's always a right answer to every question in this class. It's human dignity. Human dignity is always the right answer. They're like, oh, that can't be true. I'm like, try it. You will see that any question that we ask in this class, when you really think about it, when you really reflect on it, it's going to boil down to the reality that we're created in the image and likeness of God, not just some of us, but all of us. As Kim said in her introduction, all life, every life. And that really stuck with them as we prepared for the exam, but it sticks with me as someone who advocates and educates about these issues. The principles that guide our reflection on immigration are threefold. One, that human beings do have a right to migrate, but also that countries such as the United States have the rights and even the duty to regulate our borders. But a third principle helps us to hold together those two principles that seem to some to be contradictory, that the work of immigration, of justice and enforcement should be guided by justice and mercy, the principles of justice and mercy. And as we look at the actions of the current administration, we see practical ways in which this administration is coming up short and failing to enact immigration policy that is based on the principles of justice and mercy. We see the dehumanization of many different types of communities, but especially of the most vulnerable among us. And, wanting to get to the other speakers on the panel, I just want to tell a brief anecdote to maybe take this beyond just the experience of migrants and to illustrate the challenges that we face as a society. I myself, as a Mexican-American woman, I was born in the United States. I've lived nowhere else. If you put me in the heart of Mexico, I wouldn't know how to navigate or speak to anyone else. I have come to carry my passport everywhere that I go because the way that our policies are being enforced in this country, the way the Trump administration's policies are being carried out is not only dangerous and unjust and cruel to migrants, but it's corroding our shared society, our common good. So those are just a couple of thoughts I want to put on the table as we get started. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Nicole. That was a great way to start. And Sister Norma, let's go to you now. You're a sign of faith and hope and love on the border. And in 2019, when President Trump visited the border, you took to the pages of the Washington Post to plead with him to put human dignity first. We've seen a lot change since that time. What are the challenges facing our church in this moment in defending the dignity of our migrant sisters and brothers? And how is that dignity undermined by political actions and rhetoric that we're seeing?
Since day one, when we started to respond back home in our community in South Texas, it was all about restoring human dignity, because that's how we saw the families arriving to our country right at the border. If you saw their conditions that they were in, they were dirty and muddy, children were crying. It was very devastating to see people, human beings, in such terrible conditions. And all of us, the whole community, it was not just the Catholic, it was every single faith denomination. We all got together, we all came together as one community, actually one church. It didn't matter if you were evangelical or Presbyterian, Jewish, all of us were together. I remember one time, a young man, we were in a radio show, and they were taking questions, and he said, "I'm Catholic, but because of what you're doing, sister, I'm gonna stop being Catholic. Pues, mijo, no sé qué vas a hacer. I don't know what you're gonna be, because all of us, we're all here, And so it was about the fact that we all believe in human dignity, Everybody, the county government, the city government, Border Patrol, ICE, all of us, universities, we became one community, responding to the dignity of the person we were seeing before us, because we saw them. We saw their faces, their struggle, their pain, and we responded. Today is no different, but it's changed. The fact that people today are fearful in our communities, they're so afraid to go anywhere, and even people are afraid even to reach out and help them. And I really appreciate Bishop Flores, my bishop's response when I mentioned to him what I was seeing, because heading the charitable arm of the Catholic Church in our diocese, we're responding to all these families that are afraid and trying to be there for them and providing them food or helping them, because they're going to become homeless, they're going to kick them out. So Bishop spoke as in one of his homilies, and it was very clear to say, we must be good neighbors to one another. Even in spite of your fear, don't let that fear take control of you, but really go out and find out who are your neighbors that need you. And I think one of the most important things that we need to do, and we are doing, is keep that hope alive in families and that are struggling, that are afraid, that human dignity is a key and part of who we are as people of faith.
Thank you. Thank you. So Ashley, you're our policy and legal expert here tonight. You've worked for the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. You've worked for the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Health and Human Services on policy related to migration. So this summer, we saw the passage of that big, beautiful bill that includes some $175 billion to dramatically expand immigration detention systems and to hire thousands of new ICE agents. What's going on right now? Help us set the stage. How will all of this affect our immigration and legal systems and the essential work of our church in responding to Pope Francis and Pope Leo's call to welcome, protect, promote, and integrate immigrants?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And as a proud Georgetown Hoya, I want to say, so excited to see so many young faces in the crowd. I hope that you continue to take an interest in this work. The church's work on this is more important than ever. So very much happy to be here at the Hilltop. We've just heard some really good interventions about some particulars, but what happened here this summer with H.R. 1, the reconciliation bill, really does put a frame on what we can anticipate and see a further intensification on in the coming months and years. As Kim mentioned, the president signed the H.R. 1, the reconciliation bill. The bill allows for an unprecedented $170 billion worth of funding to immigration enforcement entities within the Department of Homeland Security and also the Department of Defense's work at the border. Just for a frame of reference here, last year's Department of Homeland Security budget itself was about $65 billion. So that's a 2.5% increase just for certain parts of the Department of Homeland Security. And I think it gives a larger picture as to what we're going to see. Massive increases of individual detention facilities in rural and suburban areas, massive increases of hiring for ICE and CBP, and a lot of impacts when we think about families who could be caught up in some of our collateral enforcement actions that occur. And we're going to hear a lot about family and family unity tonight because these are the people who are going to be most impacted by this. Today, I just want to leave with a statistic before we start hearing about some of the Catholic principles about this. Today, we have 5.6 million U.S. citizen children who have at least one family member who's undocumented. 4.7 million of those U.S. citizen children have a parent who's undocumented. When we think about the level of enforcement that is starting, occurring, and will intensify due to the money that has been put forth, authorized by Congress and the President, we have to think about these families. What will they do? How will they handle if a parent gets detained? And so, yes, we are in Washington and we're talking about the policy implications, but as always, it's really about the people and what we do here in Washington and how it impacts the people. I hope that's helpful to set the stage of how the money is impacting our communities and will continue to do so in a very intense manner.
Thank you. That was very, very helpful. And now let's go to you, Father Trevino. You're a pastor and you're a leader in West Liberty, Iowa. Your community and you personally have suffered, especially after the recent deportation of Pascual Pedro, your godson and parishioner. And you've been a leader at organizing your community to address their needs through your organization, Escucha Mi Voz. You're now working with others to respond. Could you give us a sense of how these new realities are affecting the dignity and lives of your parishioners and neighbors, and how you're responding as a parish as well?
Yeah, I'd say July 1st this year, my life changed. I was doing marriage prep, and I got a text from a parishioner, Pascual Pedro's grandfather, that Pascual Pedro, a 20-year-old kid, was detained by ICE. He was doing his check-in, doing a normal protocol, and he was sent to the Comal King County Jail, and I'm trying to figure out, well, what do we do? And so that same evening, we organized a prayer vigil, and there was 50 people, so given last minute, that was pretty impressive for rural Iowa. And then from there, every day, we kept calling the ICE office, trying to get our legislators a hold of them and everything, and the ICE director got 1,500 phone calls, just small town Iowa, so half the town probably called ICE just because of that. So again, the power of the people, it's amazing. People on all sides calling, business owners, everything, sympathetic, and even just so empowering the people and fighting back, not being afraid, because the more publicity we give to these things, the more these stories, hear me, rural Iowa now in Washington, D.C., how these things can go. And so that shows the power of the people if we speak up and don't be afraid to do it. One voice is a lot, and the more we share, as the scripture says, where two or more are gathered in my name, I'll be there. And so that's what we've been doing in Iowa. We got ICE check-ins every Tuesday. This past week, Escucha Mi Voz, where I'm co-board president, 150 people went with some people checking in. So do that, your immigrant neighbors that have those check-ins, and some people were detained, but not the ones that we went with. And so again, if you know the people, it's hard for them to be open and share, but go support them. And again, just make a big deal of everything. That's what we're doing.
Thank you so much. So now we've heard about policy, we've heard about Catholic social teaching, we've heard what's happening at the community level, we've heard what's happening at the border. That's our context. We're very grateful to have 4 bishops with us here today, each with different backgrounds and facing different challenges. So to all of our bishops, your leadership and now throughout the years, it's faced a series of challenges on all of these issues. Recently, we've seen your immigrant parishioners, the people in your diocese, face these challenges and also see the solidarity that has come from their fellow Catholics and from others. I want to turn to you all now to talk about these challenges, to talk about solidarity. And Archbishop Wenski, I'm going to start with you. You've spent most of your ministry, most of your career service caring for migrants and refugees, and recently you and the Knights of Columbus went to Alligator Alcatraz on your motorcycles and held a prayer vigil outside. Not something you often see, people showing up on motorcycles to say the rosary, but it's important.
I like it.
You were also, of course, instrumental in advocating for the right of people detained there to have access to the sacraments and to chaplains. So what are the moral questions and pastoral challenges our family of faith faces right now? And how have the spiritual lives of the people you care for been affected here? How can we all help to defend dignity here?
Well, shortly after that visit on the motorcycle, and we prayed the rosary in about 95-degree heat on a Sunday afternoon outside the Alligator Alcatraz. But by the end of that week, we had permission to say Mass, and there's been Mass being celebrated every Sunday at Alligator Alcatraz, as it's celebrated also at the Chrome Avenue Detention Center and another detention center in Pompano Beach. So we try to do that. And why is the Mass important? Because when I first raised the issue of religious services at Alligator Alcatraz, I was told by some high-up official in the state of Florida, well, why bother? Because we're not going to keep them there for more than a week. And within 2 weeks, they'll be deported. So they'll be always changing around. And I said, well, 3 reasons why it's important for the detainees to have Mass. First, it's about their dignity. We heard about human dignity. And, the human animal is the only animal that can pray. And that's what dignifies us. That's what sets us apart from the rest of the lower creation, that we can pray. And so the fact that we invite these detainees to pray, even in this very dehumanizing situation, is a way of emphasizing and evoking their dignity. And also it's a way of telling them they're not alone, they're not forgotten, and more importantly, that God has not forgotten them and that God is with them. And the God that is with them is oftentimes the God that was on Calvary. And as Mary stood by the foot of the cross, so we stand by the foot of the cross of these people and their sufferings. So that's why Mass is important, even in a detention center. But I want to, when I was thinking about coming here, I reminded myself that this is the 24th anniversary of 9/11. And 24 years ago this week, I and Bishop DiMarzio, the two of us, went to see the head of what was then called Immigration and Naturalization Services. It was Commissioner Ziegler at the time. And this was, I think, on a Monday afternoon, late afternoon. And it was shortly after President Vicente Fox gave a address to both houses of Congress, the Senate and the House, joint session of Congress. Vicente Fox, the president of Mexico, spoke to Congress and advocated for immigration reform at that time. And so we were in Ziegler's office 3 days after President Fox was there, and he said to us, "Don't worry, bishops, we're going to get this fixed this year." So I left his office, and I went and took a cab to Reagan National, got on the plane, went back to Miami, went to bed. In the morning I got up, and as I'm driving to my office, I have the radio on, the airplane flies into the World Trade Center. And so that was the end of any talk of immigration reform, because ever since the World Trade Center, America has been in a bad mood. And also it seems, the fear of national security. So our immigration programs have been reinterpreted as a problem of national security. And so we're afraid of terrorists infiltrating us by coming across the border illegally. But every one of those terrorists that flew those planes into the Pentagon and into the World Trade Center or that field in Pennsylvania, every one of them arrived in this country legally. There was not one of them that was an illegal alien, an illegal immigrant. And so fear has been what has been motivating, or maybe not motivating, but paralyzing us in trying to find a solution to the numbers of unregulated or irregular migrants in this country that are here precisely because there's a need for them. During the recession, the Great Recession of the late 1990s, we didn't have much of a problem on the border because there were no jobs here. And so the people are coming because they've been attracted by something. There's something that's pulling them here. And we don't have the figures we don't have the systems in place to regulate that or to accommodate that. And so we have a problem in which we have people being broken by the law and not breaking the law so much.
I love that, being broken by the law but not breaking the law. Let me ask you one more question, Archbishop Wenski. We heard from Ashley about the policy and legal challenges that we're facing, and also about the possible effects of this surge in funding for immigration enforcement. What kind of challenges do you foresee coming up from that? What do you see ahead?
Well, enforcement only is a very inadequate approach to this because it just plays to our fears. If you ask people in agriculture, you ask people in the service industry, you ask people in healthcare, you ask people in the construction field, and they will tell you that some of their best workers are immigrants. And so besides enforcement, and there's always going to be a role for enforcement, deportation is nothing new. Still, Obama holds the record. He deported more people than Trump has to date. So enforcement is always going to be part of any immigration policy, but we have to rationalize it and humanize it and make sure that we have people that are needed by us able to work for us or work with us legally. I think the president talks about having the biggest economy ever. And I think we should applaud that and say, we want the biggest economy ever. But you're not going to have the biggest economy ever without taking into account the labor force participation of the immigrants.
Thank you for that. Archbishop Gomez, thank you very much for joining us in this evening. You bring several perspectives to this conversation. You are a Mexican immigrant and a U.S. citizen. You're a priest and archbishop of the largest diocese in the United States, and you served as the president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, consistently calling for effective and compassionate immigration reform. And you're speaking out now to defend the dignity of all and are bringing the Catholic and larger Los Angeles community together to offer concrete support and assistance to families and communities hurt by these policies. So what are some of the responsibilities and opportunities for the rest of us to express solidarity and concrete support for those who are at risk? And can you tell us a little bit more about the community response from Catholics in Los Angeles?
Is that better?
There we go. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Keith, for the invitation, and especially for, I'm sorry I couldn't make it in person, but Los Angeles is a little far from Washington, D.C. I think what we have been talking about is what this is all about, the dignity of the human person, and the importance of us to recognize that we have many immigrants. Here in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, we can say that really the church is mostly a ministry of immigrants. We have masses and celebrations in more than 40 languages here. So there are people from all over the world, and a lot of obviously immigrants from Latin America. I think what we have been trying to do is just to, first of all, to support our people. People are really afraid of going out of their homes. A lot of the priests are telling me here in the Archdiocese that at least 30% of the people attending Mass are not coming anymore. So that shows you that it's a real difficult situation for so many people out there. What we can do, I think the first thing that we need to think is to educate people in their rights. I think we have tried to do that, helping the pastors to understand what they can share with the people in the parishes about their rights here as immigrants. Then together with that, we are trying to support them. We have lawyers that also support to the ones who are detained. And also we are, as everybody else, we are trying to support the ones that are in jail. So I think that's another thing that is important for all of us, to be always with them, because that makes a big difference. And then also we are trying to help the families that have members of the family who have been deported. So we started a program that is called Family Assistance Fund. And we are, because a lot of the people in the families, they don't even want to go out to their house. So they don't go to the store to buy food for them. So we are trying to support the pastors in the parishes that they have the possibility of helping them in their homes, that they can have, in a sense, a normal life. So that Family Assistance Fund has been very successful, the generosity of many benefactors of the Archdiocese, and also finding the way to support the families where they are. I think that's make a big difference. So what is beautiful is, as you all are talking about, the generosity of the people. I think the people understand what is the situation in our parishes and in our schools. Another big challenge is Catholic schools, because the parents don't want to take the kids to the Catholic school because they are afraid that something is going to happen to them or to themselves when they bring the kids to the church, to the parish, to the school. So I think it is mostly understanding the situation and trying to be with them, supporting them in this challenging time.
Thank you for that. Let me ask you one more question, Archbishop Gomez. This has gone on for months right now, but as we look into the future, we're surely going to face new challenges and a new scale of challenge. How can Catholics, how can those of us here today continue into the future to defend and support their communities when they're under threat from immigration enforcement actions?
Well, obviously, the most important thing is to help, as you all are talking about, to help people to understand the dignity of the human person. I think we have to understand that deportation is not an immigration policy. I think we need to, as Archbishop Wensky was saying, we really need to find a way to have an immigration reform that responds to the reality of our country. So I think that we all need a kind of a conversion about immigration. It is true that we need to protect our borders, that's for sure. But at the same time, the immigrants have been part of the history of the United States from the very beginning. So I think that's the reality that we need to be aware and find the solution at this time.
Thank you for that. Bishop Seitz, I'd love to go to you now. So you're the point person for the U.S. bishops on migration. You haven't been shy in criticizing the failures of the Trump administration and the Biden administration during that time. And the USCCB right now has been challenged in unprecedented ways by the termination of longstanding programs and longstanding collaborative efforts with the federal government on refugee resettlement, humanitarian assistance, and other vital migration work. Even the vice president early on this year accused the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops of helping migrants for financial benefit. So how has that work been affected over these last months? And how have vulnerable people in particular been effective? And what's been the conference's response?
Okay, those are some big questions. You gave me how many minutes? 3? I'm so happy to be here and honored to be with this group of clergy and Catholic leaders that have been gathered here tonight at Georgetown. Let me begin, first of all, just by pointing out that we are doing this because we're believers, because of our faith, because we're disciples of Jesus Christ, and we've read the gospel. And we hear the Lord saying we need to care in a special way for those who are most vulnerable, those who have no power, those who have no voice. I could go on a long time, but I think you know many of the passages to which I'm referring. When we speak to this issue, many people today say, oh, you're getting into politics. Well, I need to point out that this was a gospel issue before it was a political issue. And the church's teaching on immigration isn't new, and it hasn't changed. We've celebrated World Day for Migrants and Refugees for 111 years, since around the time of World War I. And even then, it wasn't just invented at that moment, right? We've had the Gospels for a longer time. And so that's the basis. I also want to point out that while it is for us a matter of living out our faith, it is also that we want to be good citizens of our country, right? We want to be good, patriotic citizens, faithful to the founding principles of this country that recognize the inalienable dignity and rights given by our Creator to every person. Without that, without a care for those who are most vulnerable among us, we cannot be a great nation. We cannot be a just nation. So these are foundations of why we do what we do. You mentioned, Kim, some of the references to the work of the Conference of Bishops, and that was particularly in the context of one group of immigrants that we define in the law as refugees. They're people who have escaped life-threatening situations, wars primarily, but also terrible famines in other parts of the world. Primarily, they've been coming from parts of Africa and the Middle East. They are in refugee camps and cannot live there. But they've had to stay there for more than 2 years at least in order to be carefully vetted before the U.S., along with many other countries, were able to say this person is deserving, this person would be a safe person, this person should be brought to our country. The nations had come together and said, we need to be part of alleviating this human catastrophe. And so we were receiving 80,000, 100,000 people a year and resettling them. And I say we, our country. Our government found out that churches and nonprofits could do this work more effectively than the government and for less money. And so that's why we were willing to do it. We saw it as tying into our work. And we were spending money on it. We weren't gaining money from the process. So it was very unfortunate that our work was characterized in this way and by the government, by government leaders. And, I just have to say, the bishops and priests I know, we're not all that much in it to make money, or we could have chosen a different profession. We're in it to serve Jesus Christ and to do His will and to build build his body on earth. So we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. One more question. Thank you. I agree. I have one more question for you for now. What needs to happen now? You advocate on policy. You think about what the U.S. bishops should be doing as leaders in the national conversation. What are policies that the USCCB or others should be pursuing at this time?
Well, it's a very challenging question, right? We have been bombarded with so many decisions and so many actions that are very concerning to us, and it's almost hard to know where to start in our response. But we've got some basic principles that guide our actions. We are not a government. We don't have the resources or the megaphone of a government. But in our own quiet, committed way, we know that we need to speak out. We need to talk to the halls of Congress, yes, but we also need to speak to our communities, to our congregations. And we've been working very hard on a plan to better educate and inform people in our communities. We know that what we can do certainly is pray, and don't underestimate its power, but we don't stop at praying. Prayer moves us to action, and that's what we ought to be doing too, by our support, our love, our accompaniment, by being present to people who have been terrorized by the actions of the government right now. We can be there with them. We can support them. I think Archbishop Gomez referred to a number of actions that we're going to have to take more seriously around the country. We have to decide how we can help these families that are being broken apart, how we can help them with their basic financial needs when they lose a breadwinner, how we can help those who are deported into worse situations than they left in the first place. I think you'll probably agree. We have a certain responsibility towards them, and I hope we can rise to the occasion.
Thank you for that. I think that word accompaniment, it feels like that's what we can all do, find ways to accompany those who are in need and suffering. And Bishop Avelio, I feel like that's what I've seen from you in the past here in our Archdiocese of Washington, your ability to accompany those in need, migrants who are suffering. And of course, it's personal for you, right? I mean, you came to this country from El Salvador, if I'm not mistaken, in the trunk of a car at the U.S.-Mexico border, and were undocumented for years. You found your way through office and construction work, to service in your parish, to seminary, to ordination. Now you're our auxiliary bishop here in Washington, D.C. It's a remarkable story, and if you don't know it, you should learn it, everybody. And here in Washington, we've seen this surge of federal agents, immigration raids, other enforcement actions, and we focus so far on the political and the pastoral dimensions of the movement, but what are the human costs? What are the ways in which families and moms and dads and children are being threatened on a daily basis?
Yes, so this issue for me is very, very personal because I was a stranger and you welcomed me. Do you know who else said that? My boss, not Cardinal McElroy. He's watching us, you know. But Jesus said, I was a stranger and you welcomed me. So what I'm hearing from people and seeing in people's eyes is fear. We all have said that already. Fear, pain, and a deep confusion. Like, where do we go from here, you know, if we are not welcome, if we cannot find a safe place, if we cannot find a home here? Where do we go from here? So the immigration enforcement, or the way, actually is the way, as Bishop Sides said already. So the way that the immigration policies are enforced these days are not only destabilizing the life of the particular immigrant, but whole families, businesses, the life of children, and whole communities, neighborhoods. So many people are avoiding these days activities, everyday activities like going to work. Maybe many people are staying at home, going shopping. Many stores are empty these days. Going to restaurants, visiting relatives and friends, going to school, taking the kids to school, and even attending church. The president says that he's enforcing these policies to make our cities safer. But if immigrants, if people are afraid of interacting with law enforcement, with police, reporting crimes, obviously they are going to become targets, of crimes. But at the same time, this is not going to help to make our streets and our communities safer. So this climate of fear is also affecting the mental health of people, the financial and even housing stability. And as Bishop Seid said already, for those people who fled oppression, who left their countries because they were victims of crime, what they are experiencing right now is just forcing them to relive these traumas. So a few weeks ago, I went to a parish that had been heavily affected by raids. And as I listened to the stories of people, telling what happened, one of the phrases that kept coming, almost everybody used that phrase, is "se lo llevaron." Se lo llevaron. They took him, or they took her. So that phrase remind me that during the civil war in El Salvador in the 80s, people used to say that, "se lo llevaron." When people were kidnapped, when people were taken by death squads, when they were disappeared by the guerrilla, people used to say, "se lo llevaron." Wow. So this is what people are experiencing these days. This is the level of terror that people are feeling these days. And children, most of them, American citizens, millions of American citizens, are also living under this constant fear of being separated from their families. Just think about your children or grandchildren fearing that any day, at any moment, they will be separated from their parents. And many of them are already going through this, experiencing this already. Because one or sometimes even both parents have been or imprisoned, detained, or are already deported. And they are asking, "Where is Dad? When is Dad coming back?" Well, he's in El Salvador, he's in Guatemala, he's in whatever. And knowing that Dad is not coming back. But how can you tell your kids? Probably you will not see your dad or your mom or your parents for a long time. So this is what people are going through. So the children also are absorbing, that the stress, the anxiety, the depression of their parents, even their self-hate, self-hate. And many are being excluded or they are excluded themselves from social events, from sports, extracurriculum activities, seeing relatives, just because their parents are afraid of going out. They are afraid of rates.
Well, let me ask you this just to follow up. What do you think the long-term effects of those kinds of experiences are? When young people, when children experience this, and also when they hear this demeaning and dehumanizing rhetoric about themselves, about people like themselves, what are the effects of that? What can we expect in the coming years?
Well, I just went to Houma, Thibodeau in Louisiana for the ordination of a bishop. And as you know, this area has been heavily hit by hurricanes many times, especially Hurricane Ida in 2021, 4 years ago. And you can see that these communities, after 4 years, these communities have not been fully recovered. Many people left the abandoned kind of their homes. They have not been repaired. So our immigrant community is experiencing a hurricane of its own these days. It is a hurricane. It's a Category 4 storm tearing through the lives of people, destroying their dreams, their jobs. I had somebody from my old parish saying, "Father, it took me years and years to build up a small construction company. He has trucks, he has a house, he has a warehouse. Should I sell it? Now that I can, because I don't know if something happens to me, and people have been paying taxes. That's something that people have been paying taxes. So this all livelihood has been destroyed. And, when migrants are portrayed as criminals, then discrimination becomes normalized. I don't know how many of you are carrying your passport, but if you have a dark skin, perhaps you have to carry it. If you look Hispanic, you have to carry that passport because discrimination has become normalized these days. And families are pushed into the shadows. So, but as people of faith, we believe that this dark night will pass, that the storm will cease, and the healing and safety and wholeness will be restored in our communities. But recovery will take time. Rebuilding trust, restoring dignity, and rekindling hope for the future will take time. It will not happen overnight. Because it is a hurricane. So we will need to do it intentionally, and deliberate to rebuild trust and to rebuild our communities.
Thank you for that. I'm struck by the conversation around fear and that idea that Jesus is with us in the boat through this hurricane, but boy, do we need something. Yes. Nicole, I want to go back to you. What's your reaction? And I'm also struck that we heard about passports again. What is your reaction to what you've heard so far tonight?
Oh, so much. The fear that has gripped our communities is so palpable. But something that Archbishop Gomez said really grabbed me, the need for a conversion on immigration. And also something else, at least on the Archbishop's screen, grabbed me, is the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe in the back. And it strikes me, I just want to propose a thesis to all of you here in the room tonight as the scholar on the panel. I have this thesis I've been playing with that Catholic social teaching is Marian, that once we are able to more fully grasp the presence of Our Lady in our social teaching, that the compassion and mercy that we're looking for will be more easily comprehensible to us, but more easy to convey to a variety of constituencies within our church and even more broadly within our nation and our world. Our Lady of Guadalupe and her appearance to Juan Diego, I think, should really be a guiding image for how we think about this moment in our church. Of course, the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe is deeply personal to many of us and provides personal comfort, but it's also a social story. It's a story about power. It's a story about the most vulnerable, the most despised member of society being seen by La Virgen and being acknowledged and lifted up and being sent before the bishops, but also before those with power. And what happened when Juan Diego showed up and said, I have seen this vision and Our Lady wants us to build her basilica here? He was not believed. He was sent away. He was distrusted. He was thought to be criminal. He was followed. And yet, he kept coming back. He kept returning. He kept, against his better judgment in certain ways, kept coming back to Tepeyac to encounter Our Lady of Guadalupe, but also back to the halls of power to preach the gospel. And I guess with that, what I want to say and what I want, to ask all of us here is, do we believe Juan Diego when he shows up to tell us what's going on? And will we allow ourselves to be converted by Juan Diego, to believe him? So I hope that we can continue to plumb our social teaching with the mind that it is, yes, it's Imago Dei, as I emphasized on the outset, but it is also Marian, and that might be an inroad for thinking better about how we approach this particular issue.
I love that idea. I love it.
Professors are always here with the ideas.
I love it. Well, it's wonderful, but also I want to draw from it this idea that we're all called a continual conversion.
Yes.
And that it's not, we can't think we have the right ideas in our head, and so therefore it's all fine. We have to be called to conversion, each one of us here tonight, as to what we can do, conversion of our hearts. How do we accompany people? Father Trevino, I want to go to you. I feel like you have accompanied people so closely. And I would love to hear what you've heard tonight and what kind of a response, what kind of a reaction you've had. What thoughts do you have on how we can move forward?
I think, again, I've been here in DC since Monday, seen a lot of museums. I've met with 3 senators, a representative, and I think just learning, obviously, appreciate our legislators and everything, but the real change comes from the bottom up. And so we, the people, we're the ones that need to keep fighting, keep not giving up. Again, like I started with 2 or more together in my name, I'll be there. The Lord said that. And so, because the more we change public opinion, that's what's happening with all these stories. People don't like agents with masks. People don't like, this police state. And so the more we expose it and show that, I think the more we can show the world and our country, 1, that this isn't right, but 2, that every person matters. Pope Benedict in the United Nations a couple of years ago when he spoke, one of my favorite quotes, maybe my favorite quote ever, everyone is willed, everyone is loved, everyone is necessary. And so these immigrants, I was at the National Archives, they had a little thing on immigrants, their history, and so, obviously we've talked here, the history of immigration, as Bishop Seitz said, this immigration fighting's gone a long time. History is my favorite subject, there's always been anti-immigrant backlash, but each new generation, and we need to change that. We need to stop that, because again, everyone is willed, everyone is loved, everyone is necessary.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much, Sister Norma. I don't know anyone who lives out that idea. Everyone is willed, everyone is loved, everyone is necessary more than you. What do you think about what we've heard tonight? What do you take away from the conversation so far?
Well, I think that one of the things that I see back home, when we start dialoguing or talking about, when the topic comes up about what's happening today and what we must do and where do we stand, it's very clear to me that there's 2 obviously responses. One very strong that supports and agrees that we must do something, that it's wrong what we're seeing, and people, they hurt for what is happening with people. But there's also another response very clearly that states, oh, we're a country of law and order, and we must stand by that, and we must make sure that, I mean, what's happening, it needs to happen because, you know, they broke the law. So it's very, for me, I see that they're good Catholics, they're good people, yet they stand very clearly in one side or another, you know. And I think one thing that is missing that I found in all this time that I've been responding to the immigrants since day one, I remember very clearly that very first day that I went to visit that immigration detention facility with children packed, you know, in terrible condition. And we started to pray, and the children, I was crying, they were crying, and we were praying. And I saw that Border Patrol agents looking in at us, and they too were moved and they were crying. And when I walked out of there, an officer turned to me and said, "Thank you, sister, for helping us realize they're human beings." You know, sometimes I think that we lose sight of our own humanity when we're trying to figure out what to do. And we cannot lose sight of our humanity, because that's what keeps us grounded with who we are in relationship to God. God is pulling us forward to do the right thing, to love. And if anything that we have, we may not have the power to end or stop all of this that's happening, we certainly do have the power to love. And we must do that.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing us back. Thanks for bringing us back to the central idea of tonight, which is that everyone has equal human dignity, which I think is the core Catholic teaching of Catholic social teaching. Ashley, I want to come to you. In light of what you've heard here tonight, what do you think about how we can move forward?
So a lot has been mentioned about conversion, and I'm not going to talk about converting in the religious sense. I'm going to talk about converting our lawmakers. It's very simple that we have to do more. We have to be willing to engage and contact blue state, red state, Republican, Democrat, our lawmakers, and say this is not okay. It's not okay that we as taxpayers moved forward with an enforcement-only piece of funding. It's not okay that there's been no vision of immigration reform that addresses some of the Catholic principles that are so important, like human dignity. But I think we have to kind of address the elephant in the room, which is this is a moment of frankly, fear for many very valid reasons. And part of our conversion effort for our lawmakers is to tell them, you cannot be afraid. You have to move forward in this moment, and you have to respond. You have to understand how important this is, how human-centric your policies must be made, and you must take a stand, or you must stop representing me and the American people. I heard many things about the enforcement, and we're talking about the funding tonight. But I do want to say, why are we settling for just a vision of enforcement? Why aren't we saying, yes, the border must be secure, but we want to see a meaningful, long-term path to citizenship for many of these people? I want to also point out that bipartisanly, since George W. Bush, every president has tried a form of immigration reform and has failed. And there's been no consequences. The next party comes in, they attempt it. Whoever blocked them doesn't face consequences. We as Catholics must make this an issue that is important enough that people think twice about just blindly writing blank checks for more detention facilities and less oversight and less true meaningful reform. We cannot continue to operate in a system that had its last major legalization in the 1980s. I'm sorry, but we do have to look within and think about our responsibility here. And part of that is, in addition to being civically engaged, is many of my colleagues here have talked about this, is being accompanied, being there for the community, pointing out like Father about the importance of this to lawmakers. And these things all come together. But we really, really must make sure that our lawmakers, regardless of where they are, know how much this matters and why it matters to us because of our values and because we want them to reflect those values to end some of the heartbreak that we're hearing here.
Thank you. I'm going to ask two more quick questions, and then we're going to have questions from the audience. But I just am struck, Archbishop Wensky, that Ashley talked about the fact that we need to advocate, we need to talk to our lawmakers, that this has been something that's been going on for years. Two things. You've been at this and at a policy level for decades. And the second thing, you managed to get, nobody thinks of the Knights of Columbus as being the world's most progressive, like there's a sort of a more, it has a more conservative reputation, I would say. And yet, because this is an issue that matters to all Catholics because it's so central, you and the Knights of Columbus rode your motorcycles to Alligator Alcatraz. And so in that sense, you were able to work across party lines against these sort of false divisions to bring Catholics together. What do we need to do to make that happen?
Well, you know, the Knights of Columbus was formed for immigrant Catholics by the founder, Father McKibney. So immigration is part of our Catholic story. And that's to our shame as Catholics that we forget that our grandparents or great-grandparents were discriminated against precisely because they were Catholic. And much of the anti-immigration feelings of the 1800s, the know-nothings, and afterwards were because those Irish and those Italians and those Poles were Catholics. And often today, you get radio talk show people that say, oh, those bishops, they're only supporting immigrants because they want to fill up their emptying pews. That's the story that they're giving us. But Ashley has right on the head. We have to change the laws. The administration can say that they are enforcing the laws. And they are enforcing the laws that are inadequate and antiquated. The Border Patrol person that was touched by the prayers of that and saw the dignity of that child will still have to deport that child tomorrow because of the laws. So the laws have to be changed. And laws are made and changed by Congress. And so each of us have to work with our Congress people and get them to have a little bit more courage. There's a few, proposals out there that have not gotten too much traction yet. Some of them are proposals that we wouldn't necessarily endorse because they are very restricted. They might give people work permits, but no chance of citizenship for 100 years, creating a new underclass. But I would say, well, if we can get that, we'll take it, because in another 2 or 4 years, there'll be a new Congress, and we can change those laws again. So let's see what we can get from the Congress. I always bring up, and I know it's impossible to get past the Congress, but there is a law on the books. And if you go on the immigration website, you'll find a section called registry. And this is something left over from the anti-immigration legislation of the 1920s. And in the 1920s, there was a provision, and immigration was shut down for about 2 generations in the United States. But there was this section in there called registry. My father benefited from it because it said that if you were born, if you were in the country before, I think it was January 1st, 1921 or 1922, and you had good moral character, you were eligible to become a U.S. citizen or a U.S. resident. My father was born in 1908, arrived here in 1910 from Russia that was occupying Poland at that time. So he got in under that. Now, the last time that registry date was updated was when? 1973. So if you are in the country, if you're an illegal or irregular immigrant in the country before 1973, and you can show good moral character, you can become a resident. But 1973 was more than 50 years ago. So how many people are involved in that? Now, if you could just update that to January 1st, 2000, or 2015, or even be generous and say 2026, you would solve all the immigration issues of what we're talking about, these inhuman enforcement actions. And that it's probably not possible to do, but instead of a law that you have to pass it in order to read it, this could only be done in about 15 words. The new registry date is, but anyway.
Well, thank you for that. And I have one more question. I appreciate it. And one more question, and then we'll go to questions from you all, and you can line up at that center microphone to ask them. But Archbishop Gomez, I would like to come to you with just one final question. And I just think this is, as we were hearing from Archbishop Wensky and from his witness in the past, the idea that Catholics can vote for different people, we can have different political opinions, but when we come together, it's around so often solidarity with those in need and serving those in need and those who are right in front of us. I think you've seen that in Los Angeles, and I'd love to hear, because I know a question we always ask is, what can people in the pews do? What are they doing in Los Angeles to help? How can people help respond in their communities to the challenges that we're facing?
Well, I think it's clear in the parishes there are right now, because the ICE raids are there, trying to assist the people that are affected by that. That's for sure. Because it is so sad to see that people that have been here for a long, long time, and they just are working and trying to make a difference in our country, they are taken to jail and then deported. Besides that, I think it's clear to all of us that we are a country of immigrants. When I think of my own family on my mother's side, they were in Texas since the middle of the 1800s. And even before that, there were a lot of Mexicans. It was part of Mexico. So we are a country of immigrants. And I think it is important for all of us, as we are talking about, to, as Ashley was saying, to make sure that we talk to people. And that's what we are trying to do here in Los Angeles, to make sure that the mayor, all the politicians are together with us supporting the immigrants. And I hope that as we all dream for, I think we'll have immigration reform very soon. So let's keep working for that. That's my prayer and my dream, that we can get something done finally.
Amen.
As a solution of these challenges.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Amen.
And so right now, we'll open it up to questions from you all. I encourage you again to go to the microphone in the center of the aisle. We encourage students especially to ask questions. I will repeat a line of the founder of the Initiative on Catholic Social Thought and Public Life, John Carr, who says, please frame your question in the form of a question. And let's go ahead and get started. Please, Aleja, go ahead.
Sure.
And please identify yourselves.
Happy to. Good evening, everyone. I'm Aleja Hertzler-McCain, a national reporter with Religion News Service. And I was fortunate enough to be able to ask this question to Bishop Seitz before the panel started, but I thought it would be interesting to hear from more of you about what you think. So part of that massive budget increase that Ashley was telling us about is a lot of hiring of new ICE agents, and that's expected to be the way that this mass deportation campaign will be carried out. So do you all think it is morally acceptable for Catholics to serve as ICE agents right now? What would you say to people who are considering applying?
I can start.
There's your theologian.
Okay, go ahead, Ashley, go ahead.
Just for a second, as someone who recently worked at the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, I do want to give a minute. I worked with some wonderful Border Patrol and Office of Field Operation officers. They're just like us. They are fathers and mothers. They're brothers and sisters. Some of them are Catholics who would talk to me about my time working for the bishops. So I do want to say that we need to humanize and make sure that we are including, all sorts of people who they are. Everybody, I think, understands. Obviously, there are people who are bad actors, but as a people, trying to move forward as law enforcement agents, I do just want to say that we need to, we've talked a lot about human dignity here, and we need to make sure that we keep that human perspective there. We need to work to change our laws and change kind of our acceptance here, but I do want to make sure that we are respectful of many of the officers that I at least have seen, and I know Sister could speak to them
Yes,
as well.
I just want to add to Ashley that is very true. I work very closely with Border Patrol, all the agents, men and women, and truly are extraordinary men and women that they care about the families. If I could just have the time, I would tell you many stories of the beautiful kindness they have toward a child, a mother, and their conditions they go home and they're hurting too.
I think
Not all of them, but I'm sure most of them.
And if that's one lesson that we take from the past days, it's right that we don't reduce people. We see the individual dignity of the individuals in front of us. I thank you, Ashley and Sister Norma. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, my name is Dan Moriarty. I work with the Maryknoll Office for Global Concerns here in Washington, and I'm so grateful to see so many bishops and archbishops here and a former president of the Bishops' Conference. One thing that we hear constantly from Catholic lay people, as well as our interfaith and ecumenical partners, is where is the Bishops' Conference as a conference? And we've been in a situation for years now where, as lay people, we are constantly quoting Pope Francis, now Pope Leo, and a constellation of individual bishops. Bishop Seitz on immigration, Archbishop Wester on nuclear weapons. But we're told when we talk to people from the Bishops' Conference that we do not any longer do pastoral letters on social and political issues. And we don't speak so much as a body on these issues because it seems to be because there's as much division there as in the population at large. But we're hearing that there is not so much division on this issue. Do any of you see the possibility for a more visible prophetic role by the Bishops' Conference as a conference? Because that's what people seem to be looking for the teaching authority of the Catholic Church on this issue.
Bishop Seitz, I'll go to you with that, since you've done so much work at the conference on this.
I've been struck in my work as chair of the Bishops' Committee on Migration what level of unanimity we have and passion about this issue. I think if you look around the country, you'll see that many of the bishops, vast majority, have spoken on this issue in recent months. And we have a lot of those on the Committee for Migration and Refugee Services website under Justice for Immigrants, which is run by the Conference of Bishops in order to bring information through liaisons to each diocese in the country. One of the problems is that, when a bishop speaks very often, the media says, we're not interested, right? It's not really picked up in the general media lines that most of us follow. So there's a problem of just getting our voice out there, and we'll continue to work at that.
I think, it's 20 years ago, but a little over 20 years ago, the bishops of the United States, together with the bishops of Mexico, issued a very powerful document called Strangers No Longer. And that document, I think, is still very cogent. It's very applicable to the times in which we live in, because it talks from the questions of principles, et cetera. And I would refer anybody to that document. And that document, or parts of that document, informs a lot of the individual bishop statements that are being made around the country.
Thank you. And that Justice for Immigrants site is a really wonderful resource for these kinds of statements, so thanks for highlighting that. Nicole?
One sentence. I do think that the question was calling for a clarion call that breaks through the noise to make this very clear, unambiguously clear, where the conference stands. And I don't want that point to be lost. I think that there's a yearning for that among the people we're talking about and among other constituencies. And I don't think it should be, we should elide that that was the question was about.
Very glad you said that, Nicole. I'm glad you said that. And I'm also glad to call on all of us to have our own clarion call as well, along with that. Thank you for that, Nicole. Sir.
Hello. My name is Pedro. I am Mexican American, and I have two questions. The first one would be, how do you think the Catholic social thought can put two myths aside? One is the one that we are talking about, that is that human dignity is only respectable when the USCIS gives you a paper that says that you're a citizen, and how this relates to the other myth on the other political side, that human dignity is only respectable when the Department of Health gives you the certificate of having birth, right? So how does this connect? How does Catholic social thought breach these blind spots that I see so clearly in American politics? One side is very good at helping the vulnerable in the womb, but not if they're outside of the wall, and the other party the other way around. I know this public has a tendency, so my point is, how do we do that? What's the work that we have to do ourselves to bridge that? The second question is also based on Catholic social thought. I think we do have like a call to participate in the common space, and I think we owe migrants more than just being left alone. I think in America the concept of no taxation without representation implies that people that are obliged to pay taxes should have political representation, and there's a complete absence of that. So isn't there a call more to ask for this representation, a call to see immigrants not only as deserving of mercy, but also as complete agents that are participating in our society, and that deserve a place in the table?
Can I give that to you, Nicole? It's Catholic social teaching, right?
Yeah, well, and I appreciate the question. Now, I realize that there's like 4,000 registered people in a room full of people here, but I'm going to get really personal here because that's what I do. I once was a Catholic who held no particular position one way or the other about abortion. And I changed my mind and my heart. A part of that was through slow, intentional conversation, not even about that issue. It was encounter with the Lord, but through people, through particular people who changed my mind and my heart, who didn't shame me or blame me or, you're a terrible person or whatever. The other thing, though, and this is, there's a pastoral, like, let's see each other as humans. Here's a little bit of prophetic. I had to go against what people who were thinking like me politically thought was acceptable. I had to start thinking more independently and less with what, influencers around me were saying. And to be honest, like, some of the people who were most supportive in my thinking about this issue are themselves ones who now disagree with me, who allowed me to ask questions and to disagree with them. If we don't have that culture of deliberation within this country, which I think is pretty clear is corroded in this moment, that's not going to happen. I see people hunkering down and not being willing to encounter because they're afraid, but also because we're not afraid, we're not willing to necessarily go against what people who we've decided are right or right about everything have to say about particular issues.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Thank you. Archbishop Wensky.
I like to tell people that Catholic social teaching is a very, very vast body of of reflection and teaching. And if you want to cure insomnia, read a papal encyclical on social teaching. But I say that you can summarize the entire body of Catholic social teachings in one phrase. And that phrase is that no man, no human person is a problem. That's Catholic social teaching. Because to reduce a human person to a problem is to offend their dignity. It's to go against their dignity as a child of God. So in that sense, if no one is a problem in social teaching, there's no such thing as a problem pregnancy. Only a child that should be welcomed in life and protected by law. The immigrant is not a problem. Might be a stranger, but a stranger that should be welcomed as a brother or sister. That guy on death row is not a problem. In spite of the crime or the horror of his crimes, his dignity as a human being should be respected even in his punishment. The old person is not a problem. Someone that is, even in the failing years, deserves to be welcomed and supported and loved. That's Catholic social teaching. No man is a problem. No human being is a problem.
I can't think of a better message and a better way to end our night than to talk about building a culture of deliberation in this particular moment we're in, and to talk about the central thesis of our faith and of Catholic social teaching, which is that no person is a problem, and that we accompany and see everyone as a person with individual dignity. I'm sorry we have to wrap up right now, but I want to let you know that there are additional resources at our website from tonight's conversation, along with ways that you can act and respond. So please go to our website to see that. There will also be a recording of this discussion. If you're in Washington and looking to show solidarity and support, you can join the Archdiocese and Jesuit Refugee Services on September 28th in the Walk for the World Day of Migrants and Refugees that starts at the Shrine of Sacred Heart at 2:30, ends in a Mass at the Cathedral of St. Matthew at 5:30. I think I got that right, Bishop Avelio. And as always, I'd like to thank my colleagues, John Carr, Kim Mazik, Chris White, Anna Gordon, Michaela Beckensall, Christian Sunan, and Blaine Bayeni, for their help in organizing this wonderful conversation, to all of you for joining us here in Gaston Hall, for all of you who joined us online. If you're here in person, there'll be a reception right one floor down. Please join us. And before we close, I want to tell you about just a couple dialogues we have coming up. On September 29th, our first Latino leader gathering about organizing in the Latino community. In October, we'll have a gathering on Pope Leo, AI, and new challenges for the economy, labor, and the dignity of work. We'll also have Cardinal Robert McElroy to Georgetown on November 18th for a Dahlgren dialogue on faith, democracy, and the common good, along with many other leaders, and we'll be co-sponsoring that with the Office of Mission and Ministry here. You can find more information about that on our website. But right now, what I'd like you to do is join me in thanking our wonderful, wonderful guests here tonight.